I am Dequitem, an armored fighter in non-choreographed night fights. Today, I'm standing here in full Norman armor. Today, I want to talk about how does it feel to only fight in high medieval mail armor, and if it is possible to do this without big injuries. This armor set is based around the 11th and 12th century Norman armor. So let's take a look at the different armor parts and let's talk about if this armor protects you well or is it only light armor. We will start this with the big shield because this is a part of armor. But before I will continue, I will take off the helmet and talk to you without all the gear on. So the most important part of high medieval armor is normally the big shield. Most shields of high medieval times are much bigger than in later periods because you don't wear that much armor, or you wear kind of armor that doesn't protect you from the strongest and most brutal strikes and crossbows and arrows. For this kind of attacks, you use the shield to protect yourself. And it's kind of a wall in front of your body. The next important part of Norman armor is of course the helmet. This is a nasal helmet. How does it protect your head? When I have the strap around my neck, and hold my shield here, it's now in the lower position, so my chin is already protected from the shield and the helmet only protects the upper part. But when I fight, I will get the shield a little bit further away from my body and close the gap between the helmet and my shield furthermore. So there isn't a huge gap when I hold the shield and be very well protected. When I fought my duels, both of my opponents can't aim pretty well to the side of my visor. And it was very hard for them to hit this gap. What about the mail? Mail protects you pretty well from most strikes and thrusts. If you get a thrust or strike here, it will hit to your face. And this do hurt, but it's not that dangerous because there is a huge gap between the mail and your face and it will slow the force of a blow a little bit. The mail of this helmet is made pretty well and so there are no sharp edges where you can get cut or the mail will bite in your flesh. There are weapons that will destroy your bones under the mail, but normal weapons of this time are not a really big threat against the mail. So the next very important part of a Norman knight armor is of course the mail armor. This mail skirt is sponsored by Lords of Battles. And of course, I will share a link to the European shop of Lords of Battles. You will find a link in the video description. Many people believe that this kind of armor doesn't protect you pretty well. But I fought in it and it didn't hurt that much. But remember, there is padding, wool under this mail skirt, and the skirt itself is like an extra layer of soft padding that is on top, nearly unpenetrable. In most cases, mail armor works pretty well and doesn't restrict you. So I really like this kind of armor, and for me it personally feels like heavy armor. You use a shield, and the shield protects you pretty well, and your opponent will have a hard time to overcome your shield and attack you directly. To overcome the shield, you have to make very difficult moves and attacks. And these kind of attacks are not that strong like a heavy blow. The weapons of the early and high medieval times are normally very fast and nimble. And they are not for making huge impact and kill someone through concussions and breaking bones. It's more about piercing and thrusting with fast weapons like a spear, a sword. And even the maces are very small. Of course, there are big axes, but most of these axes have very thin blades and are not for the course of cutting through armor or breaking every bone under your armor. Of course, it will happen if you hit my collarbone and I wouldn't wear some extra protection and 2 layers of mail in these areas. But from normal strikes, you will not get these kind of serious injuries. For making these fight videos, of course, I used a little bit more to protect my body. Some years ago, a two-handed sword broke my elbow and the bone pierced the skin and came out, and I needed many operations to use my arm again. So for me it is very important to not only use soft armor on my fights, so I used a kind of hard shell protection under the mail armor at my right arm. For me it is very important to use some extra chin protection under the trousers. The next very important part is for me a collar, and my collar has some additional plates under the mail, so you can't see it, but there is hard protection on my collar. I also need my fingers and of course the last part, some face protection. So this mask will protect my face from incoming strikes and thrusts, of course, and it gives some extra padding in the front of my head. One of the most important parts when you fight in this kind of armor is to stay relaxed and have a stance where you can use the straps of your armor to make it much lighter. So the strap around my neck to hold the shield make it easy to stay relaxed. Don't use any force, any power on my left arm. The same applies to my right hand where I hold the spear and later the sword. So I will use normally a standard lower grip where I hold the spear nearly in the middle to stay here, push the shield a little bit far away from me. I can raise it up, but that's harder. So I push it forward, and here I hold the spear and are able to thrust in the gaps of my opponent. So I have different angles to attack. Another option with this standard grip is to raise the arm and thrust over the shield of your opponent. The same is possible when I change the grip. Then I can thrust from above, but this limits the range of my attack. So if you don't want to throw the spear, what is absolutely possible in this combination, I would use the standard lower grip and raise the arm if needed. But if you throw the spear, you can pull out your sword. You stay behind your shield with the arm, make it hard for the opponent to predict your attack, and attack there from different angles. You can also turn the blade with both sides to hit strikes to the face of your opponent, or if you hit too short, you can thrust inside the ice. Same applies to a lower grip, where you hide your sword behind your shield and are able to thrust from different angles. The most important part in this style of fighting is normally that you keep your shield in front of your body. It's much more important to be protected than hurting your opponent. So you stay behind the shield and stay safe. I hope it was interesting to see some Norman high medieval mail armor in action and to see how I made it possible to fight in these without getting injured and with nearly no bruises at all. Then, thanks for watching, stay safe, and don't kill your training partners.